Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Dr. Rosenna Bakari is a psychologist, educator, and leadership consultant. She is the creator of the 7 Exits framework, a transformational model centered on the power of conscious departure. Her work integrates lived wisdom, mental wellness, and empowerment practices that promote alignment rather than performance. In addition to being a scholar and thought leader, Dr. Bakari is a 4th-degree black belt, marathon runner, and poet who integrates mind, body, and purpose into her work. Her newly released book, 7 Exits, Leaving Behind What No Longer Serves You, offers a grounded, practical path to lasting personal change, and it serves as the foundation for her transformational courses that guide people back to themselves.
Well, hello. Thank you for joining us. Let me get this right. It's Rosenna.
Yes.
Thank you again, Rosenna, for joining us. I'm delighted that you were able to get me a copy of your book, 7 Exits. And I'm hoping you can start us off by giving us your, the intro to this and what you're hoping people will take away from this book, kind of like why you wrote it and what you hope people will take away from it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and happy to talk about that. So 7 Exits, Leave Behind What No Longer Serves You. Someone has called it the magnum opus because it's my 7th book. And I feel like it's the book I've been trying to write for the last 2 decades to really give people an understanding of give people an invitation into a healing process or a transformation process that often seems scary for people. And so when I started my own healing journey, at least that's how it felt as well. I had been on all sides of the couch. I have a PhD in psychology, so I've taught psychology for decades. I've been a client on the couch. I've had to address my own trauma. I've been a mentor. I've been a researcher. So I feel like I have a grasp of this whole mental health field and have been critical of some of the things that it lacks in delivering services and meeting the needs of help seekers, and also being grateful and thankful for the impact that it has in helping us to understand human behavior and the mind. So 7 X's is a culmination of all that I've come to understand and applying it to my own life and my life with clients. And that is at the end of it, that all this we want to be better, we want to be more. It sounds like we're supposed to be in pursuit of something. So 7 Exits says, wait. No, what happens if we begin to let go of things instead of trying to be more? What if we start investing our development in what are we holding on to that's no longer serving us? And I don't mean people in cars. I mean, and I can tell you specifically what I mean the hyperego. What would happen if we started to show up with less of an ego? What would happen if we started to release our silences and secrecies, our complacency, our indoctrinations? What would happen if we start to leave those things behind? You know what would happen? It'd be just you and me, heart to heart, really being able to connect with each other without all the static between us. But much of that has gone to the wayside as we begin to pursue beauty and fitness and money and experiences and travel and all this other stuff that tells us we've arrived. Unfortunately, sometimes the further we arrive, the further we get from ourselves. So that's what the 7 Exits is about.
And you named almost all of them there.
Yes.
The last one that you didn't mention is from my notes on the book is purpose and passion. So
Yes.
if you would say a little bit about why we would want to leave behind purpose and passion.
I'd love to. So purpose and passion is a good thing. All of these, in fact, are in moderation, but we often extend or exceed moderation. So purpose and passion is one of the things that we hold on to that actually can remind us that we're not enough, that we're not arrived. We have not arrived. And sometimes we hold on to it as this hope that one day we're going to arrive. And we're like, oh, if I just find my purpose and passion, I'll be okay. There's nothing lacking about you that gives you permission to be okay right now, and especially not passion and purpose. Instead, when we find passion and purpose in daily living, then we're getting somewhere. But this idea that it's the passion and purpose that we must pursue in order to have our happiness or have a meaningful life, then that's one of the ideas or constructs that we can exit out of and instead begin to pursue alignment.
Yeah, the phrase being instead of doing comes to mind, right?
Yes, yes.
So what's the context in which you developed this work? Am I correct in remembering that you had a lot of work with trauma and addictions?
Yes. So I do have a background in working with addiction in my early in my career, but the last 20 years, in fact, from 2000 to 2010, I founded and ran an organization for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, which I am one myself. And so I was very close to the work and addressed a lot of issues with people recovering from or trying to heal from adult survivors. And again, oftentimes it's easy to get trapped into this idea that there's something that's missing because we use the language something has been taken from us. And when we get stuck in that language, that's the language of lack. It means we're small, it means we're insignificant. And so what happens if we stop trying to get something back that we believe was taken from us, and we start looking at the things we have yet to exit out of in order to become full, because we can't change what happened, but we can minimize its effect on our daily living by getting rid of the things that keep us stuck in that pattern.
Yeah, I think in terms of what I download is into my mind and my energy system and beliefs about myself as I go through certain situations. That's literally what we call the trauma, right? It's not the event itself. It's what I took, what I came to believe about myself, or the energies that might be lodged in the body, or the negative thoughts that just keep spinning, that without my recognizing them and acknowledging I have a choice about whether to focus on them or not, they just keep spinning, right? And it's something I carry with me into all of these other life events and relationships. So when you look at the list of your exits, you use the term hyperego, and I hadn't heard that before. So can you enlighten us as to what you mean by it and how you came to use it?
Right. So, ego, we are used to that word, and it's not a bad word. Uh, but when we overextend it, then we lose our authentic self. And particularly if we're talking about anyone who's come from any sense of trauma, whether it's in childhood or even in adulthood, we have to protect ourselves, or at least our mind tells us we have to protect ourselves. We go in protective mode. So then we come up with things that's how I am, or nobody's going to hurt me again, or these excuses that our ego now amplifies into hyperego. Hyperego is hyperprotective. Hyperego is hyperperformance. We're already good at what we do, yet we don't ever feel like it's enough. Or I know I'm really good at what I do, but I'm not sure that you know that I'm really good at what I do. So I go into hyperego, making sure that you know too. And so it becomes so performative and so protective. Now we're into hyperego instead of ego. Ego tells you to lock your door at night so you're safe. Hyperego tells you to never unlock it, you know?
Right.
You know?
Got it.
So,
Got it. And of course, the next one is silence and secrecy. And for decades, I've talked to people about how it's our secrets that keep us sick.
Ooh.
And I used to talk about how if it takes 10 units of my mental energy to hide a secret from somebody, that same amount of my own mind energy is going into feeding the conclusion within me that I'm damaged, broken, or unlovable. And if the person I'm hiding this secret from discovers it, they'll either attack me or run away from me. And so every secret at any level that I hold, that dynamic is fueling my own belief in my lack.
Absolutely. It is such a heavy burden that people don't realize, especially when we have secrets that we now, because we like to normalize things, because then we don't have to look at them or address them. And that's when they actually have their biggest effect. And so sometimes we think it's just privacy. And so dealing with the difference between how do I live openly as a survivor versus how do I maintain my privacy? Is it private or is it a secret? So that's one of the questions I ask my clients a lot. If it's privacy, you're trying to protect your right to not have everybody know your business. But if it's private, someone knowing it doesn't feel like it's going to destroy you. It's still private to me that I'm an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse. That's still private information, yet I live openly as a survivor, right? It's private because I don't go around saying that and shouting that and putting in every conversation, right? But it's not a secret. Because it's not a secret, whenever the context allows for it, invites it, I can have some conversation around it without shrinking and feeling shameful, which I did until I was 45 years of age, right? And really started digging into the work. And so, it's a secret if it gets out, it's going to instill the slightest bit of shame or guilt or negativity. You're not just being private, you're trying to hold on to a secret. And when we understand how these things that we hold on to interrupt our lives in small ways, then we really can begin to see ourselves with more clarity.
Right. Critical is to be able to see myself with more clarity, right? If the more accurately I can view myself without shrinking away from it or judging it negatively, the better decisions I'm able to make. So the next one you've got is emotional dependency. If you would, give us the thumbnail sketch of why you have to release or take an exit from that. And what do you mean by emotional dependency?
Seeking validation is emotional dependence. When I don't get to know or understand myself, I can never get clarity about who I am if I constantly seek validation from other people or from even one other person. Then again, it removes me from the clarity. Because what happens is that I begin to be intertwined with you or me, and I am you, and neither of us then have clarity. I don't have clarity about who I am, and I don't have clarity about who you are, because I only see you as a tool to know myself, really. So I don't even get to see you as you are. So everything gets judged based on my dependency, my emotional dependence in this relationship. And that puts a strain on the relationship, and it puts a strain on you. And life is so much easier when you allow yourself to be free. Not at first, it isn't, but when you allow yourself to make mistakes. So this, like, yeah, is someone's going to judge you? Okay, they will. And so what? To be alone without feeling like you're isolated or you're going to be alone forever. Okay, so what? I'm outside of a relationship. Okay, my children moved. They graduated from college and they're moving away from home. That's not about you. That's about them taking care of their lives. I see that a lot with, particularly with people who have stayed home with their children, for example. We have all kind of unhealthy emotional dependencies on people or places. And so when we hold so tight to them, then again, it interferes with that clarity about who we are.
And so you're not advocating that people give up all their emotions or all their relationships. You're advocating that people become aware of the investment they're making and whether or not it's a realistic investment. In other words, if I want you to make me happy, that's an unrealistic investment in you.
Right. You know what's interesting in this kind of the next one is I think, or one of them is stagnant relationships too. The next one, so they kind of go together, but there's definitely some things that keep them separate. There's so many idiosyncrasies in this, like this idea that I'm going to be letting go. The reality is that when I free you, our relationship becomes bigger, not smaller. But if you're held in that spot of emotional dependency, it's just really difficult to trust that. But when I can allow myself to see you for who you are and trust you to see me for who I am, is such a bigger relationship than a tiny confined space that we operate in when I rely on you just to fulfill my needs.
Yeah, it is what like you talked before about the word ego and then the hyperego, but the ego as a tool is a very useful tool, although it's limited, right? Like a carpenter doesn't just have a hammer. Carpenter has all kinds of other tools and measuring devices, etc. If I'm using this tool of relationship or emotion to either control you or demand that you do things that control my behavior or my emotions, then everything's, what's the old adage about, oh, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So everything you do that I don't like, then once I'm in that mode, I can start to use it as accumulating evidence for why you're a bad person, or maybe I shouldn't be in a relationship with you, etc.
Yes. And that's a very small relationship as opposed to really seeing you.
And it gets smaller and smaller the more I
Mhm.
hold to that vision of it. The other thing that just popped into my mind is all through listening to your book, I kept thinking about the book by Dr. Henry Cloud, Necessary Endings. Are you familiar with that book?
No, I'm not.
It's the same kind of theme as you have in your book. He just tries to help people do an analysis of, the return on investment and the cost benefit analysis for relationships and behaviors and jobs. And that's the kind of thing that just kept coming up for me. You're doing that from a less corporate angle. I mean, he was trying to do it from a corporate angle. And all the way through the book, he would say, and of course, this applies to personal relationships as well. But when I can see that something I'm doing that I'm actually doing and have some control over is either keeping me stuck or taking me in the opposite direction of where I want to go, it's pretty easy to cease it, right? When I see it all the way to the roots of what's causing it within me. However, if I don't see it, it just keeps having its impact on me. And
Absolutely.
I just flashed on the story you tell in the book about driving and who drives in your marriage. Can you share?
Sure. So the story goes, and this is like within the last, I say 15 years, or we've been married for over 30 years. So maybe within the last 20 years. So that's what we're talking about, continuous growth, right? And so when I started to sort of come out of my shell in a different way, to be an entrepreneur and build something different, like, oh, I have more to give. Like, look at that with this healing, I have more to give. And, and so I started saying to my husband, like, or complaining sort of like, why do you have to drive all the time? And, cause that's how I saw it. But he had never seen it that way. And he was like, who cares who drives? But because he had always gotten in a car, gotten behind a driver's seat, then my assumption was that he was attached to that. That was my assumption. That was a behavior. Yes, that was his pattern, but that was not his attachment. More or less, it had been my attachment of what it meant to play these roles as husband and wife and caregiver and what his part is. And he never cared who drove. But that's not how it looked from my end, especially since I thought I was a better driver than he is. I still think I'm a better driver than he is. But
Well, the facts are the facts, right?
right. But he could care less about which seat he sat in on these trips. So it was such an unnecessary weight on my mind that I carried for years. I didn't know I was carrying. Sometimes you don't even know you're carrying these itty bitty, teeny weeny, tiny resentments that are related to how you see yourself. And then that's what you project into the world. Like you said, when you can see it, it's a game changer. That's why I love personal development. When I got to the point where I just welcomed it, like, ooh, look at what I get to change today. But that's what people run from.
Yeah, well, some do, right? And some run towards it, right? And you just said, these itsy bitsy, these teeny weeny little issues. And of course, in Miracles would point out that the slightest irritation is connected to the deepest rage. So if I'm willing to take responsibility for those slight irritations and look into them, use a tool, process them, lighten up my attachment to them, to use some of the phrases you use, I can do a lot of good work without having to wait until I'm in the throes of some major emotional crisis.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that is really my wish for people everywhere, is that we can learn to do the work without being into crisis. Because I am not a believer that you need pain to gain. I want to shift the world toward personal growth without personal trauma.
At the same time, I'm having listened to your book, I understand you would hold the position that it's possible to turn pain into gain. You just don't need to go out and create the pain in order to have gain.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. 100%. That's it. Yes.
In a process like yours, in reading a book like yours and engaging that process, I would offer that it will help people turn their pain or their discomforts into their gains.
Absolutely. Yes. If we just step into it. I mean, life has its challenges. No one's getting out of here without some pain and challenges. What I hope for is that we move out of the space where pain is the only thing that shifts us. Right? I still have some pain in my life, right? But it doesn't guide my behavior. It's not what moves me. I can learn and grow without feeling wronged or bitter or defensive. It's like, ooh, I get to look at that little thing and make those little changes so that when the pain comes, I'm prepared.
Okay, so when the pain comes, you're prepared. But the other thing you said was that you want people to be in a position where pain isn't the only thing that motivates them to change and grow. And that leads to one of the next exits, which is complacency, right?
Yes.
If I'm in that complacent space, then pretty much the only thing that'll get me to move and change and grow is enough pain.
Absolutely. 100%.
And so talk a little bit, if you would, about what you mean by the exit of complacency.
Right. So we want to keep growth fresh. And that doesn't mean we're bouncing around, because then we get to passion and purpose later. We're not bouncing around. We're not just doing busy work with ourselves, but we want to be paying enough attention to ourselves that we see the growth that is happening. And growth doesn't happen we know what happens. You can't watch grass grow, like, you know, but that we are not stuck. And particularly for high performing people who get so many accolades, it seems like what I notice is that the more accolades that I got, the fewer invitations into growth I got.
I like to just say that one more time. The more accolades I get, what happens to your growth or the
The
invitations
fewer
to grow?
invitations, right? The fewer invitations I get to grow. No one says, "Hey, but how's your when you're getting the stars? How's your relationship with your children?" People don't ask those kinds of questions. How are you feeling about the things you sacrificed to get here? People don't ask those kind of questions. They just keep pouring on the accolades. So you don't get a lot of invitations to self-reflect, to go within, to check in with yourself, to say, okay, but what's at the next level? All right, you're here. Now you made it. Now what's next? When I say what's next, I don't mean what's next on a career realm. I mean, like, what's next? What's your next path toward growth? Where are you going from here? We're just going to sit
What's the
back.
next piece of baggage that's unproductive that you can unload or put down?
Exactly. Exactly. And there are so few invitations for that for people who are getting the accolades. And you see some of the most popular books are about how to make more money, how to advance in your career, how to get, and people do that and take pride in that. I'm not separating myself out from that. I just like to think that that's not the priority for me, that what's in my heart and what's in my mind and what comes out of my mouth is so much more critical than what goes into a bank account.
Yes, absolutely. I just think about, I've come across it a couple different times recently. It's something that Abraham Hicks says on a regular basis. Your most important creation in any moment is your emotion in that moment. And your inner state is your responsibility. If you understand that, if people have helped coach you and train you into how you work with that and what the choice of the focus of your conscious awareness is as a powerful creative force, then now you're empowered, right?
Yes.
And now you can start using that focus of your attention as, Krishnamurti would say, the flame of attention. It'll just cut through all of the garbage and help you understand, or help whatever you're looking at teach you about itself.
Yes. I love that expression. Let it teach you about itself. I love that. Absolutely. And so then everything in life becomes sort of your playground. You get to make things and experience the world with new eyes almost every day.
So, how can you experience the world with new eyes every day if you've been indoctrinated? So, here's indoctrination, another one of your exits. Can you talk about that?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why we want to exit out of indoctrination so that we can see the world anew. Our mind likes to make things easier for us. It likes to tell us what we've already done, even if it's not working. Our mind is very prejudiced toward telling us what we've done, not telling us what we've done right. But it's like this is a familiar path. So it will always lead you down the familiar path, not down the path that's healthy, is that's right, or that meets your needs. And so indoctrination does is good at that, because indoctrination just says I have this list of rules, whether they're from my culture, my family, my work profession, my religion, but I have this list of rules, and these are the rules that I apply to everything, whether or not they fit. And so the mind is happy because it doesn't work as hard, but it's not nearly as creative or not nearly as fulfilled. So sometimes people are, even if you take the example that we just talked about with my husband and the driving, part of that was indoctrination, right? I don't know that I ever saw my mother drive when my father was in the car, you know?
That's a big one. Well, what we watched our parents do, right? And we like Bruce Lipton says, our first 7 years of our life, we're living in a state of self hypnosis, and we're just sucking in stuff we didn't even realize it's getting lodged in there, and that's a part of the indoctrination. So,
Absolutely.
most of the time, when I hear people use the word indoctrination, my mind at least is saying, oh, someone is intentionally trying to implant something in a person. And yet what we're talking about here is we get indoctrinated just by living with our parents.
Absolutely. And in organizations too, So even if we're looking at certainly the profession of psychology has its indoctrinations, right? So professions have their indoctrinations, and organizations have their indoctrinations, and sometimes friend groups have indoctrinations. It's like, no, this is what we do. And it's
We do,
nice
yeah.
because right, it's the we.
Yeah.
So it gives you this sense of safety because you have some sense of belonging. You know for sure in indoctrination that you are not the only one who believes that. And that feels powerful,
Right.
but it's not.
Right. Right. It's the illusion of power.
Right.
I just flashed on the book Buddha's Brain. And it's a book about trying to make sense of the neuroscience of how we might have gotten where we are. And one of the things they talk about is that we're, as humans, the brain's kind of evolved to over-predict for negative outcome, danger
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yes. Yep.
So we stay hypervigilant. And the other one is that we're kind of programmed to over-predict how much joy or satisfaction we're going to get from something before we've got it.
Right.
So there are all kinds of phrases in our culture, like, the shine is worn off that rose, or the honeymoon is over, or right. The recognition that we build ourselves up in this expectation of it's going to be so great when I get that new stereo, and then you save or you win it or whatever. You get the stereo and it's great. And for a week or two, you're playing music 24/7. And a year later, it's got dust all over it and you haven't turned it on in 6 months, right? So it's that kind of thing that they start to look at. We don't need to beat ourselves up over this. We just need to start to look inside and understand, how did this develop as a very strong pattern that we over-predict the satisfaction or joy we're going to get from acquiring something, and we lean towards expecting the negative or danger far more often than it's actually there.
Absolutely. I have a little story recently. A couple of days ago, I was at the gym with a friend. And when we left, we went into the locker room together to get our things. And so she saw, and I was like, oh, I don't even know what locker I put my coat in. So I checked a couple of lockers. I got, oh, here's my coat. And I just opened up the locker and got my coat out. And walking out, she said, you didn't have a lock on your locker? I was like, no. I was like, just my coat in there. Like, and she said, but what if someone takes your coat? And I said, then I guess they needed it. And she looked at me like that was the oddest answer. And she was just
What planet did you come from? Yeah.
and then she thought about it though, and she was like, that really makes sense. I would it was like, yeah, I guess they needed it. She said, I have like probably 20 coats at home. I said, yeah, I have a few too. So if someone took it, I assume they needed it. Like, it's cold out there.
My brain is telling me that in this exchange between you and your friend, she's coming from hyperego and you're helping her see the hyperego impact.
Right. So I don't go into the gym thinking someone may steal my coat. Like, I just don't put that much. I don't go in there thinking someone's not going to steal it either. Like you said, I've learned to cut myself off from some predictions. Not all. Oh, not all. But I've learned to cut myself off from some unnecessary predictions. So I'm not thinking about whether or not somebody's going to steal my coat because I put it in a locker. Maybe if I had my wallet in, but I intentionally didn't have my wallet in there. So my ego had done its job of making me feel some level of safety. Coats are a dime a dozen.
Excellent. And the seventh of your 7 exits, I want to give you, the opportunity to come back to the purpose and passion now that we've talked about the others. And what I got from what you said before is that it can be very useful to have purpose and passion in your life, but if it gets to that hyperego state, or if it gets to be something that you feel like you don't have value until you achieve the purpose or passion, do I have that right from what you were saying? Then it's a problem?
Right. It's really the pursuit of that, right? When you're pursuing purpose and passion as opposed to living with purpose and passion. Purpose and passion are expressions, not pursuits.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Right. So when I allow my passion and purpose to be seen, whether it's I'm passionate about humanity, that I don't worry about a coat in a locker, right? That's part of that, is my passion for humanity, right? I'm not trying to protect myself from humanity, right? Even though there are certainly moments where where I might go into hypervigilance, but I intentionally try not to do that. And the things that I do, I try to do things with purpose. Like, I want to be intentional about this. And so again, they have their use, but trying to avoid making an identity out of it is important. That we don't make an identity out of our passion and our purpose. I've sat in, for example, consulting rooms where I'm there to support organizations. And one of the things that I see is that these three teams are both fighting over their individual passion and purpose that they feel like they have in this job. Well, this is important because this is my team, and so in some ways that's they are bringing their passion and purpose and attaching to that instead of each other, instead of the ideas, instead of the humanity on the table. They're really fighting over passion and purpose. So those are the ways when passion and purpose, as you say, get intertwined with hyper ego, then it does more harm than good.
Well, I just realized how long we've talked and think we should just take a breath and get centered and ask you to review what we've talked about so far and decide, is there something you want to go back and highlight that we've already talked about, or something we haven't even mentioned yet about you, your work, or this book that you want to bring into the conversation?
Sure. I like to summarize these 7 exits up, and you may remember the concepts in the book about being self-centered, because that's how I see these. When we commit ourselves to these exits, to just means that we're bringing ourselves into the awareness of self, then we can be self-centered, not selfish, but self-centered. So when we center ourselves in every problem, every solution, every pride, every joy, every disappointment, when we center ourselves there, we begin to master our own lives as opposed to being other-centered. Someone else is going to make me happy. Someone else is the cause of that problem. Something else
is needed for me to be happy, right?
Right. So when we bring it back to self, then I really like for us to operate on a concept of being self-centered. I'm really disappointed today that meeting didn't go like I said. They didn't do what they said they did. Okay, where am I situated in that? What decision did I contribute anything to that situation? And even if I didn't, what do I have to contribute to the resolution of it? Where does my power lie? I'm self-centered. I'm going to focus that on me, not on what other people need to do, because I can't control other people. So every time I blame it on you, I disempower myself. So that's one of the things I think is real important for people to grasp in the 7 exits, that it's a self-centered framework.
I keep thinking when you say that of Dr. Michael Rice, R-Y-C-E, and he talks about rather than selfish, let's be self-wise.
Yes.
This is my interpretation. Every time I heard you talk about it in the book, and I'm hearing you now, my brain is translating that into, yeah, she's talking about what Dr. Michael Rice is referring to when he says, be self-wise. And when you're self-wise, then you understand you're connected to everyone and everything, and you keep your energy focused on the things you actually have some control over, and things work out better.
Right. There's such beauty and connection that we keep missing. I think as the world gets more complex, it's intuitive to want to close ourselves in and find our little corner. And I lived like that for a long time, just trying to protect my corner of the world and feel safe. Man, I missed so much. And I mean, it is what it is. But I will say living now openly, I'm not just living openly as an adult survivor. I'm living openly, right? Like open up that heart and really be intentional about wanting to make connections with people. Like that's how we get new eyes. I get new eyes because I'm trying to see with your eyes and I'm trying to see with their eyes, and you just see so much more of the world that way. But it's a trust fall. Like I get it. It's a trust fall, but well worth the trip.
And with what you have done inside yourself and with the work you've done, in combination with the life events you've lived through, whether you want to call them traumatic or not, all of that is what makes it possible for you to have the depth and appreciation of life that you do now when you're choosing to engage and when you're choosing for interdependence rather than emotional dependence. So I strongly encourage people to recognize that it's silly to think, well, I only have this good thing in my life today because of that bad thing in my life. But it's not so silly to think I have some of the good things in my life today because of how I've chosen to interpret and respond to the challenges in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not the pain that gives you the gain, it's the healing of the pain that gives you the gain.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff in there where you interpret and respond to it. I was just reading an Alan Watts article where he was talking about how we cry out or we pray that we want strength or we want patience, and then we run kicking and screaming from the situations that demand us to be patient
Absolutely.
or demand us to get stronger in order to handle it.
Absolutely. And once we and it's silly because once we really get it that you've already been through the worst, like if you're coming from trauma, your life is likely never going to be that traumatic again. Pat yourself on the back. Look at what you've done. You've gotten here, and now how can you grow? Because you've already done the hard part,
Yeah.
which was the survival. Now let's move on to thriving.
Right. And what else can you do with that, the energies that are still in you or the memories you have about it to grow even further?
Exactly, because you don't wanna get stuck in survival, you wanna thrive,
Right.
you wanna start creating the joy. Because survival is about just overcoming something. It doesn't put you in control of your life, it just means you didn't die, which is good because that's what our brain is meant to do, keep us alive. And now what?
I just have to mention this as you're talking. I'm seeing in my head an image of a piece of art. It's an artwork that when the camera starts, it's on one of those nights where you've got a gimbaled camera so you can move all around it. When you start looking at it, it's the picture of a bird of prey, like a American kestrel or a hawk. And the camera starts moving around this way. And by the time you get to the other side, you realize this is just garbage picked. Here's a
Mm,
doll's head, here's a spoon, here's a bent fork, here's a feather, it's all of this stuff out of a dumpster, but it's been arranged in a way. If you come from this perspective, you see this beautiful image. Well, that's basically what we all have an opportunity to do with anything we're still carrying from anything in our past that we would label as trauma.
absolutely,
We can turn that
absolutely.
trash into treasures kind of things. We can literally learn to grow from it into the perspective that says, you know what? That did happen, and yet that's not who I am.
Absolutely. It absolutely is not who you are. And so now the healing is about introducing yourself to who you are. Now I get to really pursue and find who I really am.
Yeah, I like that, introducing yourself, because for the vast majority of the things we discover, it's not that I have to grow into it, it's that I'm already it and I've been suppressing it or denying it.
Absolutely, which is why we want to let go and shed. It's a transformation is a shedding, it's not a gathering.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you wanna offer some closing words of wisdom, on top of the wisdom you've already shared?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. One of the things that I will share that I'm excited about is that I am opening the Bakari Institute where I'm actually delivering courses now on 7X's, a variety of courses for personal transformation, leadership, etc. And so, if anybody's interested in really diving into the framework of 7X's, that is available and they can find that if they go to 7x's.com, they can find out more information about that. And I'm super, super duper excited about coming to this point in my own transformation in terms of personal transformation, career transformation, author transformation, to feel like I'm in the mix of where I want to be in terms of influencing and gathering other people around to take this journey.
Excellent. So is that the preferred way for people to connect with you is through the website 7exits.com?
That's the easiest way, yeah, and my name will be in, I'm sure, in the notes and stuff, and so rosennabakari.com, they can look there too, but 7X's is maybe easier for people to remember. Just spell out the word 7X's.com, and you can easily reach me from there.
Great. Delightful. Well, thank you so much for being willing to take time to share with us. And I greatly appreciate your willingness to send me the book in advance. It's made it a lot easier.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a blessing.
Thank you so much. I look forward to sharing the episode when it comes out.
Dr. Rosenna Bakari is a psychologist, educator, and leadership consultant. She is the creator of the 7 Exits framework, a transformational model centered on the power of conscious departure. Her work integrates lived wisdom, mental wellness, and empowerment practices that promote alignment rather than performance. In addition to being a scholar and thought leader, Dr. Bakari is a 4th-degree black belt, marathon runner, and poet who integrates mind, body, and purpose into her work. Her newly released book, 7 Exits, Leaving Behind What No Longer Serves You, offers a grounded, practical path to lasting personal change, and it serves as the foundation for her transformational courses that guide people back to themselves.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.